Now to the growing debate over how to stop school shootings like the one that killed 5 young Amish girls this week in Pennsylvania. The recent rash of gun violence on campus has put fear, lockdowns, and one radical idea out into the mainstream. On Friday, another child was buried in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. 12-year-old Anna Mae Stolfitz was the 5th and final victim of this week's school massacre to be laid to rest.
There's still 3 girls in the hospital that, we're hoping will have fairly good recovery.
This only a week after a homeless man in Colorado went into a school, took 6 girls hostage, then fatally shot one before turning the gun on himself.
911, where's your emergency?
Weston School District. We got a kid that come in the front doors of the high school with a gun.
And last week in Wisconsin, Principal John Klang was killed by a 15-year-old freshman said to be despondent over being punished for tobacco use. In the past week alone, 14 American schools have gone into full lockdown due to threats of potential violence, including 2 in Vermont and Iowa just yesterday. The tension is understandable because already this young school year, there have been 24 shooting incidents at or near schools, 7 of which were fatal. Just 7 years ago, gun violence in school was a relatively minor concern, but that was before Columbine, which left 13 people dead. Before 5 were killed in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Before 3 were gunned down in Paducah, Kentucky. This week, President Bush will host a summit designed to find a way to make schools safer.
We grieve with the parents, and we share the concerns. Our school children should never fear their safety when they enter into a classroom.
One lawmaker in Wisconsin believes he has a solution, allowing teachers and principals to carry guns. And joining us now from Green Bay is the man who proposes arming teachers and principals in schools, Wisconsin State Representative Frank Lessay, and also joining us from Washington, Dennis Hennigan of the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence. Thanks for being with us, gentlemen.
Good morning, Bill. And
Mr. Lessay.
Good morning, Bill. It's a great day in Wisconsin.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. Explain your plan here, because the perception is when you hear this idea, it sort of conjures images of old westerns. Do you envision teachers with holsters, with guns in their desks?
Absolutely. There certainly would not be carrying guns around with them. I actually envision that they'd be locked under lock and key. They would go through an extensive training program, background check, psychological review, and then they would be able to have guns in the school, but they would be under lock and key, and I would envision the only time ever they would be taken out is in the case of an armed intruder in the school or coming to the school and an imminent threat. That's when they'd go to the locked container, take them out, and defend our children and themselves.
Do you see this as some sort of a deterrent, just the idea that there is a loaded gun in the school?
Absolutely, and the uncertainty of knowing who has it, where it is, how many are in the school are a great deterrent. I think people who are willing to do this are cowardly and bullies, and often all you need to do is display and know that they are going to be challenged with equal firepower, and that'll stop them in the first place or stop them in the act. Or at the very least, you're able to hold them down until more police can get there and really handle the situation properly. I don't want our kids in a turkey shoot situation where someone can indiscriminately shoot whoever they want with no fear of any reprisal or any other gun in our gun-free zones in and around schools.
Mr. Hennigan, your response to the idea that a loaded gun in the school would keep one of these guys out?
Well, I have to tell you, as a parent and as someone who's been involved in gun violence prevention for a long time, I think this is one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. I think most parents would agree. All that would do is increase the risk of violence in the schools. It's like adding fuel to a fire. One can imagine all kinds of horrific scenarios where kids get a hold of their teachers' guns, where a teacher uses bad judgment and tries to break up a scuffle in the hallway using a gun and somebody ends up being shot. It's a terrible idea, and I might add that even the National Rifle Association, which generally thinks more guns in more places is a good thing and has no problem with guns in bars and churches and sports stadiums, even the NRA draws the line at schools. This is an extremist proposal, as you said, a radical proposal, and a very dangerous proposal.
Mr. Lessay, do you have any support from the NRA?
First of all, the NRA position, that's news to me. I've been communicated they're very supportive of this plan, particularly when they hear the details of it. We need to get past the emotionalism that you're trying to portray. I have children in grade school. I know their teachers. I know the staff at schools. I trust their common sense and their judgment. I think with the proper training, and you're overlooking the fact that we have military personnel, people who have been in the military in our schools, and they'd be logical choices with the additional training for our children. What I don't have, and you talked about imagining, what I don't want to imagine is what has just gone on. We've seen it. It seems to be a growing problem where defenseless children are shot at will, or other things are done to them before or after this. And there are cases around the country where teachers and principals have gone to their car because they're following the law to get a gun and stop them from further shooting children, and that's exactly what this is for. So it's unfortunate that we have to resort to fear-mongering and denigration of an idea.
There's a lot of fear given the recent news. I have to give the final word to Mr. Hennigan there. Will you have a seat? Will the gun control advocates have a seat at the President's Summit this week, do you think?
Well, we certainly hope so, because you cannot seriously discuss the problem of school violence or violence in general without talking about the problem of guns. We've got to get serious about this, and not, instead of talking about these ridiculous proposals to arm teachers, bring more guns into the schools, we've got to talk about common sense efforts to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people, out of the hands of our kids, because once they're in the hands of those dangerous people, then we're all at risk.
Gentlemen, thank you both for your insight.